Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night, your heart pounding, your mind racing. The room is silent, but inside your head there's a cacophony. Voices arguing, doubts whispering, fears screaming. You try to quiet them, but they only grow louder. You tell yourself to relax, to breathe, but the more you resist, the more they tighten their grip. It's as if your mind has turned against you, a battlefield where no side can win, yet the war rages on. This is not a nightmare. This is your everyday reality. You go through your days smiling, working, talking, laughing, but beneath the surface, there's a silent war being waged. It's a war you didn't choose, one you barely notice, yet it shapes every decision, every emotion, every thought. It's the war between who you are and who you think you should be, between your desires and your fears, between the life you want and the life you've settled for. And here's the paradox. The harder you fight to silence the noise, the louder it becomes. The more you try to control your mind, the more it controls you. You've been taught to believe that peace comes from winning this war, from defeating your doubts, your insecurities, your flaws. But what if the opposite is true? What if the war itself is the problem? Think about it. How many hours have you spent replaying conversations in your head, worrying about the future, or criticizing yourself for past mistakes? How much of your energy is drained by the endless tug-of-war between your ambitions and your self-doubt? How often do you feel like a stranger in your own mind, watching as it sabotages your happiness, your relationships, your potential? This is the silent war within your mind. It's not fought with weapons or armies, but with thoughts and emotions. It's not waged on battlefields, but in the quiet moments when you're alone with yourself. And yet, its consequences are profound. It shapes your identity, your relationships, your entire worldview. It determines whether you live a life of freedom or one of quiet desperation. But here's the question that haunts us all. Why does this war exist? Why are we at odds with ourselves? Why does the mind, the very tool we rely on to navigate the world, so often feel like our greatest enemy? To answer this, we must venture into the depths of the human psyche, where ancient fears and modern anxieties collide. We must confront the uncomfortable truth that much of what we call thinking is not really thinking at all. It's a conditioned response, a survival mechanism gone awry. We must question the very nature of the self, the stories we tell ourselves, and the illusions we cling to. This is not an easy journey. It requires courage to face the chaos within, to question the beliefs we've held for so long, to see ourselves as we truly are. But it's also a journey of liberation, one that promises not just an end to the war, but a deeper understanding of who we are and what we're capable of. So, let's begin. Let's step into the battlefield of the mind, not as soldiers, but as explorers. Let's uncover the hidden forces that fuel this war, the psychological and philosophical roots of our inner conflict. And let's ask the most dangerous question of all. What if the war within your mind is not a curse, but a call to awaken? The answers may unsettle you. They may challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself, but they may also set you free. Now, take a deep breath. The journey begins. To understand the silent war within your mind, you must first confront a startling truth. The mind is not a unified entity. It is not a single, coherent voice guiding you toward clarity and purpose. Instead, it is a fragmented landscape, a mosaic of conflicting desires, fears, and identities. Carl Jung called this the psyche, a realm where the conscious and unconscious mind are in constant dialogue, or more often in conflict. Imagine your mind as a house. The conscious mind is the living room, tidy and presentable, where you entertain guests and present your best self. But beneath the surface, in the basement, lies the unconscious, a shadowy, chaotic space filled with repressed memories, unspoken fears, and forgotten dreams. These two realms are not separate, they are interconnected, and what happens in the basement inevitably seeps into the living room. This is where the war begins. The conscious mind, driven by societal expectations and personal ambitions, seeks control. It wants order, success, and certainty. But the unconscious mind, shaped by primal instincts and unresolved emotions, resists. It whispers doubts, conjures fears, and sabotages your best-laid plans. The result is an inner conflict that feels inescapable, a tug-of-war between who you are and who you think you should be. But why does this conflict exist? Why are we not born with a harmonious mind, free from doubt and fear? The answer lies in the very nature of human consciousness. Unlike animals, which operate largely on instinct, humans possess self-awareness. We can reflect on our thoughts, question our actions, and imagine alternative futures. This gift of consciousness is what allows us to create art, build civilizations, and seek meaning. But it also comes with a cost. The burden of choice. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this deeply. He saw that the human mind is torn between two fundamental forces, the Apollonian and the Dionysian. The Apollonian represents order, reason, and control, the part of us that seeks structure and meaning. The Dionysian, on the other hand, embodies chaos, instinct, and emotion, the part of us that craves freedom and spontaneity. These forces are not enemies. They are complementary. But when one dominates the other, imbalance occurs, and the war within begins. In modern society, the Apollonian reigns supreme. We are taught to value logic over intuition, productivity over creativity, and certainty over ambiguity. We are conditioned to suppress our emotions, to hide our vulnerabilities, and to present a polished version of ourselves to the world. But the Dionysian does not disappear. It lurks in the shadows, manifesting as anxiety, depression, or addiction. It is the part of us that rebels against the constraints of modern life, that yearns for something deeper, something more authentic. Arthur Schopenhauer took this idea further. He argued that the human will, the driving force behind our desires and actions, is inherently insatiable. We are always striving, always wanting, but never truly satisfied. This endless striving, he believed, is the root of our suffering. It is what keeps us trapped in the cycle of desire and disappointment, of hope and despair. And then there is Jean-Paul Sartre, who famously declared, "Hell is other people, but perhaps hell is also ourselves." Sartre's existentialism teaches us that we are condemned to be free, that we must create our own meaning in a world that offers none. This freedom is both a gift and a burden. It forces us to confront the void, to grapple with the absurdity of existence, and to take responsibility for our choices. But for many, this responsibility is too heavy to bear. So we retreat into distractions, into routines, into the safety of conformity. But the war within your mind is not just a philosophical dilemma. It is also a psychological one. Modern neuroscience reveals that the brain is a complex network of competing systems. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational decision-making, is often at odds with the amygdala, the seat of fear and emotion. This tension is not a flaw, it is a feature of human evolution. It is what allowed our ancestors to survive in a dangerous world. But in the relative safety of modern life, this same tension becomes a source of inner turmoil. Add to this the influence of culture and society. From a young age, we are bombarded with messages about who we should be, what we should want, and how we should live. We are taught to measure our worth by external standards, by our achievements, our possessions, our social status. But these standards are often arbitrary, even contradictory. They create a gap between our authentic selves and the selves we feel compelled to present to the world. This gap is the breeding ground for the silent war within. So what is the hidden problem? It is not simply that we are at war with ourselves, it is that we have been taught to see this war as inevitable, as a natural part of being human. We have been conditioned to believe that the only way to win is through control, through suppressing our emotions, silencing our doubts, and conquering our fears. But what if this approach is itself the problem? What if the war cannot be won, but only transcended? This is the question we must now explore. For the war within your mind is not just a personal struggle, it is a reflection of deeper forces, psychological, philosophical, and societal. To understand it fully, we must delve into its unseen consequences, into the ways it shapes your reality and limits your potential. The silent war within your mind is not confined to the private theater of your thoughts. It spills over into every aspect of your life, shaping your relationships, your decisions, and even your perception of reality. It is a force so pervasive, so insidious, that you may not even realize how deeply it influences you, but its consequences are everywhere if you know where to look. Consider this. Have you ever found yourself paralyzed by indecision, torn between two equally compelling options? Or perhaps you've experienced the frustration of setting a goal, only to sabotage yourself before you even begin. These are not mere quirks of personality, they are symptoms of the war within. At its core, this war creates a state of cognitive dissonance, a psychological tension that arises when your beliefs, desires, and actions are misaligned. You want to be confident, but you doubt yourself. You strive for success, but you fear failure. You long for connection, but you build walls to protect yourself. This dissonance is not just uncomfortable, it is exhausting. It drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and keeps you stuck in a cycle of self-defeat. But the consequences go even deeper. The silent war within your mind shapes your perception of reality itself. Cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts that help you navigate the world, are often hijacked by this inner conflict. Confirmation bias, for example, leads you to seek out information that supports your existing beliefs while ignoring evidence to the contrary. This is not just a flaw in reasoning, it is a defense mechanism, a way to maintain the fragile equilibrium of your inner world. Take the phenomenon of the self-fulfilling prophecy. When you believe you are unworthy of love or success, you unconsciously behave in ways that confirm this belief. You push people away, avoid opportunities, and settle for less than you deserve. In doing so, you create the very reality you fear. This is not just a psychological trick, it is a profound insight into the power of the mind to shape your experience of the world. And then there is the impact on your emotions. The war within your mind amplifies feelings of anxiety, guilt, and shame. These emotions are not just unpleasant, they are corrosive. They erode your self-esteem, distort your self-image, and trap you in a cycle of negativity. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, observed that suffering is inevitable, but how we respond to it determines its impact. The war within your mind magnifies your suffering, turning ordinary challenges into existential crises. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of this war is its effect on your sense of identity. In the struggle to reconcile your conflicting desires and fears, you lose touch with your authentic self. You become a collection of masks, each one designed to please others, to meet expectations, or to avoid judgment. Over time, these masks harden into a false self, a persona that feels familiar but hollow. This is what Carl Jung called the persona, the social facade that hides your true nature. The tragedy is that this false self becomes a prison. It limits your potential, stifles your creativity, and distances you from your deepest desires. You may achieve success, accumulate wealth, or gain recognition, but none of it brings lasting fulfillment. Because fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from alignment with your true self. And yet the war within your mind is not just a personal struggle, it is also a societal one. Modern society, with its emphasis on productivity, consumption, and instant gratification, exacerbates this inner conflict. It rewards conformity over individuality, distraction over reflection, and speed over depth. In such a world, the silent war within your mind becomes not just a personal battle, but a cultural epidemic. Consider the rise of mental health issues in recent decades. Anxiety, depression, and burnout are not just individual problems. They are symptoms of a society at odds with itself. We live in a world that demands constant connectivity, relentless ambition, and perpetual growth. But these demands come at a cost. They fragment our attention, deplete our energy, and alienate us from ourselves. The silent war within your mind is both a cause and a consequence of this societal dysfunction. It is a reflection of the broader tensions between individuality and conformity, freedom and control, meaning and materialism. To understand this war fully, we must see it not just as a personal struggle, but as a cultural phenomenon, one that shapes and is shaped by the world we live in. But here's the question: if the war within your mind is so pervasive, so deeply rooted in both psychology and society, is it possible to escape it, or are we doomed to fight this battle forever? The answer lies not in winning the war, but in understanding its true nature. For the war within your mind is not a curse, but a call to awaken. It is an invitation to confront the illusions that bind you, to reclaim your authentic self, and to create a new way of being. This is the path to freedom, but it is not an easy one. It requires courage to face the chaos within, to question the beliefs you've held for so long, and to embrace the uncertainty of the unknown. It requires a radical shift in perspective, one that challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world. The silent war within your mind is not a life sentence. It is not an immutable fact of existence, but a construct, a product of conditioning, fear, and misunderstanding. To break free from it, you must first recognize that the war itself is an illusion. It is not a battle to be won, but a pattern to be transcended. This realization is the first step toward rebellion. Rebellion in this context is not an act of defiance against others, but against the internal forces that have held you captive. It is a refusal to accept the false narratives, the limiting beliefs, and the self-imposed constraints that have shaped your life. It is a declaration of independence from the tyranny of your own mind. But how do you rebel against something so deeply ingrained? How do you dismantle the patterns of thought and behavior that have defined you for so long? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective, one that challenges the very foundations of your inner world. This shift begins with awareness. You must become an observer of your own mind, a witness to the thoughts and emotions that arise within you. This is not an easy task, for the mind is a master of distraction. It will pull you into its dramas, its fears, its fantasies. But with practice, you can learn to step back, to create a space between yourself and your thoughts. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward wholeness and self-realization. It involves integrating the fragmented parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious. This is not a process of elimination, but of reconciliation. You do not defeat your fears or suppress your desires. You acknowledge them, understand them, and bring them into harmony with your true self. One powerful tool in this process is shadow work. The shadow, as Jung defined it, is the part of yourself that you reject or deny, the traits, emotions, and desires that you deem unacceptable. These hidden aspects of yourself do not disappear. They fester in the unconscious, influencing your behavior in ways you may not even realize. By confronting your shadow, by bringing it into the light of awareness, you can begin to heal the divisions within yourself. But rebellion is not just an internal process. It's also a practical one. It requires action, small, deliberate steps that challenge the status quo of your life. This might mean setting boundaries with people who drain your energy, pursuing a passion you've long neglected, or simply allowing yourself to rest without guilt. Each act of rebellion, no matter how small, is a declaration of your autonomy, a step toward reclaiming your life. Friedrich Nietzsche offers another insight into this process. He believed that true freedom comes from embracing the concept of eternal recurrence, the idea that you must live your life as if every moment will repeat itself infinitely. This is not a call to perfection, but to authenticity. It challenges you to ask, if I had to relive this moment forever, would I be proud of how I lived it? This question can serve as a compass, guiding you toward choices that align with your deepest values. Another key to breaking free is cultivating presence. The war within your mind thrives on distraction, on dwelling in the past or worrying about the future. But the present moment, as Eckhart Tolle teaches, is the only place where true peace can be found. By anchoring yourself in the here and now, you can escape the endless loop of thoughts and emotions that fuel the war within. Mindfulness practices, such as meditation or deep breathing, can help you develop this presence. But presence is not just a technique, it is a way of being. It involves fully engaging with whatever you are doing, whether it's washing dishes, having a conversation, or simply sitting in silence. In this state of presence, the noise of the mind begins to fade, and you can hear the quiet voice of your true self. Rebellion also requires a redefinition of success. In a society that equates success with wealth, status, and achievement, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But success, as Viktor Frankl reminds us, is not something to be pursued directly. It is the byproduct of living a meaningful life. By aligning your actions with your values, by contributing to something greater than yourself, you can find a sense of purpose that transcends the war within. Finally, rebellion is an act of self-compassion. It is a recognition that you are not broken but human, that your struggles are not failures but opportunities for growth. By treating yourself with kindness and understanding, you can begin to heal the wounds that fuel the war within. But the journey does not end here. Breaking free from the silent war within your mind is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. It requires vigilance, courage, and a willingness to confront the unknown. And it leads to the ultimate truth, a realization so profound that it redefines how you see yourself and the world. The silent war within your mind is not a flaw in your design. It is not a punishment for your inadequacies or a sign of your brokenness. It is, in fact, a call to awaken, a signal that you are ready to transcend the illusions that have held you captive. The ultimate truth, the final and most powerful realization is this: the war within your mind is not your enemy. It is your teacher. This truth is not easy to accept. It requires you to see your struggles not as obstacles, but as opportunities. It demands that you reframe your pain, your doubt, and your fear as catalysts for growth. It invites you to embrace the chaos within as a necessary step toward clarity and wholeness. Consider this: every great transformation in history, personal, cultural, or spiritual, has emerged from conflict. The caterpillar does not become a butterfly without the struggle of breaking free from its cocoon. The seed does not become a tree without the tension of pushing through the soil. And you cannot become who you are meant to be without confronting the war within your mind. This war, as painful as it may be, is the crucible in which your true self is forged. It is the fire that burns away the falsehoods, the fears, and the illusions that have kept you small. It is the mirror that reflects your deepest desires, your hidden strengths, and your untapped potential. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop fighting the war, the moment you stop seeing it as a battle to be won, is the moment it begins to lose its power over you. This is not surrender in the traditional sense. It is a surrender to the truth. It is an acknowledgement that the war within your mind is not something to be defeated, but something to be understood. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The ultimate truth is that the war within your mind is a call to make the unconscious conscious, to bring light to the shadows, to integrate the fragmented parts of yourself, and to reclaim your wholeness. This process is not linear. It is messy, unpredictable, and often uncomfortable, but it is also deeply liberating. As you begin to understand the roots of your inner conflict, as you uncover the beliefs and fears that have shaped your life, you gain the power to rewrite your story. You become the author of your own existence, rather than a character in someone else's narrative. The final realization is this: you are not your mind. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, the stillness beneath the noise, the presence that observes the chaos without being consumed by it. This awareness is your true self, the part of you that is unchanging, eternal, and free. When you connect with this awareness, the war within your mind begins to lose its grip. The thoughts and emotions that once seemed so overwhelming become like clouds passing through the sky, temporary, fleeting, and ultimately harmless. You realize that you are not defined by your thoughts, but by your ability to observe them. You are not controlled by your emotions, but by your relationship to them. This shift in perspective is not just intellectual, it is experiential. It is a felt sense of freedom, a deep knowing that you are more than the sum of your fears and desires. It is the realization that you are, and always have been, whole. But this realization is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. It is an invitation to live from this place of awareness, to align your actions with your true self, and to create a life that reflects your deepest values. It is a call to step into your power, to embrace your authenticity, and to contribute to the world in a way that only you can. The silent war within your mind is not a curse, but a gift. It is a reminder that you are alive, that you are capable of growth, and that you are part of something greater than yourself. It is a call to awaken, to transform, and to become who you are meant to be. So take a deep breath. The war is not over, but it no longer defines you. You are free.